Alright, so I'm in the middle of working on a new piece, and I'm sure several of you have been following along with the progress, which is great, by the way. But I'm going a little bit crazy working on this right now, and I think one thing that might help me keep my sanity could be, I don't know, just talking through it, doing a little bit of content creation, if you will. So we're going to shade a part together. It's been a while since I've done a tutorial, so I am pretty excited for this. And like I said, that's kind of the point of me doing this right now. So I'm working on a part that I would call is, or that I would say is not too exciting, the sleeve. There's lots of detail in the sleeve. You might think of it as, oh, well, jerseys are pretty plain, but when you start factoring in all the different folds in the jersey and the little highlights and shadows and dots, it can get a little bit crazy sometimes. So hopefully this makes things go a little bit quicker. Anyways, the part that I'm working on is going to be this part of the sleeve here. So you can see in my reference image, we've got lots of detail in here. I might not be capturing all the detail that's involved in this jersey. You can see it comes right down to even some of the stitching here. I probably won't get that detailed, but regardless, I'm going to walk you guys through how I approach part of my drawing. Let me kind of reorient here. Give me a second. Don't get dizzy as I move you over. That might be a little bit better. Wait, we can do better even. You dizzy yet? Okay. Okay. So if you guys don't know, my approach to drawing, I use the grid method, not only just for my outlines and sketching part, but also for keeping my sanity when it comes to chipping away at a drawing. Because when I divide my drawing into these squares, I do 1 inch by 1 inch squares most of the time, unless I'm dealing with quite a bit of detail. It's pretty rare, actually. So I'll use the grid method, or these 1 inch by 1 inch squares, and that helps me break down my drawing into numerous smaller drawings. Now, I've already erased some of my grid lines through this part. I don't leave my grid line. You can actually see the remnants of one right through here. I don't leave my grid lines as I go over them unless it is a darker area. If I'm working on a light part of a drawing, such as a jersey, specifically a white one, then I want to try to get rid of most of the grid lines. A faint outline left behind is fine. You probably can't even see that on the video. But if it's anything substantial, then it's really going to interfere with the blending, and you'll probably be able to see it through. So I'm going to get started here. I'm very unconventional, so if I start doing something that you're like, wait, that's not how I was taught, it's okay. Just hear me out how I do things. This is the way that I like to draw. So I'm working on this square here. Okay, so it runs down to kind of his armpit, up to maybe just below his ear, which I have yet to work on. I hate doing ears. I leave them till later. So this section here, the section of his white jersey. Now, when it comes to doing very, very light shades, I like to use my 2H mechanical pencil. It doesn't have to be mechanical when laying down a base layer, but I'm going to, just because I don't know where my other 2H graphite is, my traditional graphite pencil. So I'm going to start laying down a tone, and I'm going to aim for a mid-tone in this section. I'm not going to go for the lightest, and I'm not going to go for the darkest. And the reason for that is I like to be able to bring my tones up or down a bit. I think it's because I'm a bit of a lazy drawer. If I can hit my tones accurately right off the bat, then I go for it. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to lay down a base mid-tone. So again, this is not going to be the lightest shade in this section. This is not going to be the darkest shade in the section. It's simply going to be somewhere in the middle. And I've lost a bit of my outline here, so I'm just going to add that in through here. Sorry, my phone's yelling at me. Let me close that. There we go. I'm adding in that little bit of outline that I've lost. Not a big deal. I can always manipulate that later. Okay, so laying down my mid-tone. When I shade, I tend to hold on to the end of my pencil and allow gravity and the pencil itself to do the work. That way I can keep my pressure fairly consistent. Anytime I can allow gravity to do the work, I jump all over that. And you can see I'm coming outside the bounds of this box, this 1 inch by 1 inch square. I don't care too much about that right now. Okay, so this isn't perfect. If I wanted to go even darker for this section, I can do a little bit. Let's just do it. I'll head the other way with my pencil strokes, and this will darken this tone as well. You can see I'm coming outside my outline here. It's not too much of a big deal when I'm using a 2H. If I was using more pressure or using a 4B, then we might be starting over or throwing down some Band-Aid sections here. Okay, so I've got my mid-tone there, pretty close to where I want it to be. It's probably a little bit on the dark side to where I want it, just because again I added that extra back and forth, and I'm just evening it out here. I'm gonna try to get this as uniform as possible. Okay, and now I've got a few options. A lot of artists, yeah, amateur artists, realistic artists, will leave it like this, and it's a very stylized look. But I think if you want to go for photorealism, you have to blend. Now, I'm going to choose a couple of different approaches to blending this together. And the selection between the two different options really does come down to, do I want it darker or do I want it lighter to be about the same as what I have there? So the two options that I consider are a cotton swab or a Q-tip and a Tortillon. Now, if I were to use my cotton swab and blend this, then it's going to darken it slightly, or sorry, it's going to lighten it or even keep it the same depending on how much pressure I use. And if I use my Tortillon, specifically one that has a little bit of graphite on it already from some previous smudging, then it is going to darken it. Now, if we go back to our reference photo here, which I'm going to show yet again. Okay. So that's not going to work. I hate lighting. My apologies. That might be the best choice here. So in comparing this area, and this area, I can see that this area and this area are relatively the same. And this area is darker. Not really because of the undertone that's there, but because of the jersey dots that I've used, and my camera's not showing it very good, and I need to do some cleanup work in here. But bottom line is I need these two areas to be fairly similar. So these two areas are the ones that we're talking about. I think that we're pretty close in this tone. So I'm going to go ahead and use a Q-tip to blend this out. And I'm just using fairly, I would say what I would call medium pressure in merging or blending these pencil strokes together. And as I approach the edges, I'm being a little bit cautious, but I'm not being too crazy. Not worrying too much about it as I get to my outline here, because like I said earlier, we can do a little bit of manipulation with that outline. I'm probably using terms that people have never heard before. You know, if you're an art student, like, man, what the heck's this guy talking about? I am not a classically trained artist. A lot of what I know, I've taught myself. So while I'm here, I am going to clean up that outline. Okay. And I'm just using, I'm using an electric eraser. That's just what I happen to grab. That's what's next to me. My Tombow Mono Zero eraser is somewhere here. And you can see I'm kind of cutting in a little bit, just adding a little bit of definition through here. What do I want to do? Probably cut in a little bit more here and bring that up. Something like that. This is why I like the grid method. It really allows you to be flexible. You know, if you do want to make some changes as you go, you know, from your reference image. And I'm probably going to carry that on. Oops, yeah, okay. So I am liking where this is going. And now I have a couple of choices. Either I can get in here and I can start working on my highlights, or I can start adding some shadows. So I want to, just because my OCD kicks in pretty quickly here, I want to add a little bit of my highlights, which is kind of the areas of stitching on the jersey. So I'm going to just, it's very gentle. It's almost just like gentle scratching through here. See what that does? I'm not pushing very hard because, again, I don't want this to be white. It's not a white highlight. If I leave that white, it's going to look like he's wearing some kind of reflective vest. Gabriel Landeskog doing a little bit of highway cleanup or something. It's not what we're going for. And even still, I would say that this is far too bright. So I can either, again, take my cotton swab or my Tortillon, and I can darken it. And because I do want to get this significantly darker, I'm going to opt for the Tortillon. This probably looks like nothing's changing on camera. So this guy's just pretending to do things. Okay. And the other side of my stitch is getting away from me a little bit, so I'm just going to clean that up there too. Good, good. Okay. Now, there are other highlights in this part of the jersey. Let me bring it back to you guys here. Sorry. As I hold this the right side up now. I'm working on it upside down, by the way, because people give me trouble for this. I jump all around when I'm working on my drawings, but I'm still very cognizant about my hand touching the paper and smudging the work that I've done. So I find that if I can place my hand off the side of my paper, I'll go ahead and do that regardless of the orientation of my drawing. So anyways, if we're looking at our reference image here again, so this is the section that we're working on. I just added our highlight through here, through the stitching. And there are other highlights. This one's just outside our 1-inch square, this seam. And there are some in through here. But this, I'm not certain of what value that's going to be. So I don't want to go in there yet with my eraser. Instead, what I want to do is I want to create this shadow through here, specifically this part of the triangle, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in that stitch. And I notice here there's a little part of the highlight I missed. So while I am recalling that, I'm going to add it in. So it's going to be somewhere in here. But I think I want to do the shadow first. Do I want to do the shadow first? Yeah. Let's do the shadow first. Now, the shadow itself isn't drastically different. It's going to look different on our reference image because of how it's oriented next to some of our brighter points. So with my shadows, I tend to err on the side of caution and build my shadows up very slowly, and I'm fairly sure that is quite traditional. So I'm going to start outlining the my shadow, and I'm just thinking if I want to make any changes as I go, but not. I think we're good. So this is going to come down and onto there. Now this is where, again, a lot of people will make a mistake and they will be way too strong with some of their guides that they're putting in. Be gentle with these, because the darker you make this, the darker you're going to make your shadow to try to compensate. And I used to make that mistake all the time. So, and this is probably why my eyesight is quite terrible now, is because these are very difficult differences to see. So at this point, I'm just gently adding in my shadow. And honestly, that looks pretty good right there, just the way it is. But we want to push that fold deeper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blend this, and because, again, I want it to be deeper, I'm going to choose to use a Tortillon. So this will darken it. Near the edges of my shadow, I'm going to be a little bit firmer. And towards the center, I'm going to be considerably lighter. That just is going to help with some of that depth. Again, I'm a lazy artist. Now I think what I want to do is I want to get in here and I want to establish some of my deeper tones right now. I'm fairly confident in how dark I need to go. So, and again, I'm still using my 2H here. Fine artists right now are like, oh my god, you're still using the 2H. But I'm very confident with the pressure that I'm using, my ability to control my pressure between graphite pencils. I used to do pressure control practice, and again, I don't know if other artists do this a lot, but I would create charts where down the left-hand side of my chart, it basically would be a grid. Down the left-hand side of my chart, I would have a list of pencils, 2H, 2B, pretty much, honestly, everything between a 10H and an 8B or a 10B, depending on, what stage I was at there. And across the top, I would write levels of pressure. So, typically it would be 1 to a 5, where 1 is just allowing gravity to do the work, and 5 would be me pushing absolutely as hard as I can without breaking the pencil. And I would fill out the entire grid. And sorry, I'm just kind of get lost, forget that I'm talking about what I'm doing as I go. Blend that out. And I would repeat it numerous times, over and over and over again, until I felt like I was able to be consistent. And so I don't do it as often anymore. Sometimes I do it. I will probably still do it a couple times a year, I think. I've done it once this year. I'll do it again, maybe towards Christmas. Just to kind of recalibrate. And again, this highlight here is fairly dark, but it's light in comparison to everything else that's around it. So there's the stitching that's done there. Now, most of you right now are probably thinking like, wow, I do not have the patience for this. Well, this isn't by any means, hard and fast rules that you have to live by when you draw. Draw the way that you like to draw. And I want to take this time again to reiterate the fact that this is how I draw. This is not how to draw. This is how I draw. And if you want to draw like me, it doesn't even mean that you have to draw the way I draw. But maybe this sparks some interest for some of you. Maybe this gets you excited. Maybe it motivates you. And now I'm just kind of going full-on cowboy in this section here, just adding in highlights willy-nilly. Going to throw in some shadows because, again, I feel like I've done the hard work. I've established a lot of my tones, and I feel a lot more confident going on a bit of autopilot here, if you will. And that also kind of sparks another discussion. A question that I get quite often is, where did you learn to draw. Sorry, I don't like this highlight at all. I'm gonna get rid of it. Look at that. Oh, it's gone. Magic. So this, specifically this highlight, and it's because I made some changes to my outline here. I'll just get that back. There we go. That's better. Okay. And I feel like you put that in the exact same spot. It probably is. With some little tiny tweaks there. I like that better. So the question I get is, where did you learn to draw? And the answer is my desk at home. I love experimenting at home when it comes to drawing. I find it very rewarding to sit there, try to figure out a way of doing something, and then, you know, putting it into practice and seeing how it really helps a piece, you know, come together. Phone's yelling at me again. It's extremely rewarding. So these are techniques that, you know, you've probably seen maybe by other artists, or, you know, you've been taught yourself, or maybe it's a variation of those techniques. But these are ones that I can say, you know, even though they're popular, I came about them my way, which is a little bit ironic because I'm sitting here, you know, essentially providing a tutorial on how to fast track it. But not everybody is, not everybody likes self-teaching, and I fully respect that. I really do. This highlight's way too strong. I'm bringing that down. Yeah, that's better. Same with that one. Yeah, I respect it. Everybody has their own way of learning, and some people don't want to figure out how to draw, they just want to draw. So, for all you people that might be saying, well, okay, it's a little hypocritical, just remember the reason I'm doing this video right now is because I just want to keep my sanity while working on areas that aren't as exciting, if you will. Okay, there is a section of the sleeve done. Not too crazy, but I won't lie, that half hour went by a lot quicker than it would have if it was just me going at this. In terms of final comments on this right here, I still have a little bit of work that I need to do. I want to do a little bit more balancing through here. I do have to darken up a bit of the stitching, which, before I forget, I'm just going to quickly add that in there. And I got to decide whether or not I'm going to put some texture in the jersey, but for right now, I'm happy with that. I'm going to grab some water, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you got something from it. And if not, that's okay. That's okay. We don't have to be perfect in order to have value, guys. Have a wonderful day.